So welcome to our hip and knee pain program today. I'm excited to be offering this class for the first time, and it should fall in line with some of the other back pain and neck pain classes that I've offered, with a little more specialty focus on the hip and the knee. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Allie. I am a doctor of physical therapy as well as a nationally certified Pilates instructor. I founded the Pilates RX here in Boston, which is where I practice full time, but I do teach with the Community Online Academy all day on Thursdays. So for our class today, it's going to be 30 minutes, almost entirely movement based. We will do some stretching, some strengthening, and mobility work related to the hip and knee. And then we will save a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. Now, like all my classes, everyone is coming into this program with a little different hip issue or knee issue or a combination of the two. Please listen to your body. I'm going to offer a number of ways to modify this program. So please take the option that feels right for you, and that way you can get the most out of this program and leave feeling a little bit better than you came into it. So unlike most of my classes, we're actually going to start today up in standing. And part of the reason is a lot of our hip and our knee joint, they don't get as much blood flow when we sit a lot. And so I want to warm up the tissue a little bit, and then we're going to find ourselves down onto the mat. So you guys can join me. I want to make sure that you have a good view that you can see me here. Let me make one other little adjustment. All right. Okay, so in your comfortable standing position, look down at your feet first and foremost. Your feet should be parallel to one another. And so sometimes we like to turn our feet out or turn our toes in. Our two legs might be doing something different. We're going to talk about what that means. But for right now, I want your feet to be parallel underneath your body. In that position, notice if your ankles are rolling in. I want you to think of creating an active arch in your foot. Even if you don't see a change, pretend like you are lifting the arches of your foot up and away from the floor, but still keeping your big toe down on the floor. So our feet are the foundation for what happens at our hip and our knee. So we're going to warm this up now. Once we're in that position, reach your fingertips up to the ceiling and just gently start to march, okay? Trying to lift your knees up as high as you feel comfortable. If this is uncomfortable for your hips, modify your range of motion, maybe even just alternate lifting one heel off the ground and then the other. If you're comfortable with that bigger range, think about drawing your knee up to your shoulder. So like you're pulling it up and in. It should feel like a little bit of work, but not pinching or pain. So find that range of motion that works for your body. Notice if you're doing a lot of side to side wiggling, try and think of planting your feet firmly to the floor beneath you. Reach with your fingertips up to the ceiling. Good. That's it. We go for 5 more. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Gently place both feet back down. We're going to take some side steps now. So very gently stepping to the right and to the left. Okay, so bringing your feet towards one another. In fact, I'm going to highlight my feet here so you guys can see. Options to modify. This is your modified version starting here. Now, if you are comfortable, you're going to add a lift of the leg. Reach up and lift. Reach up and lift. So you can bring your hands to your hips. I will lift up the screen to show you guys a little bigger lift here with your arm. So same arm reaching up and over. Okay, this is optional. We are starting class here, not to be perfect about our form, but just to bring a little bit of extra blood flow to the tissue. Good, that's it. 4 more. 3, 2, last time, good, and come down. Now we're gonna find ourselves down onto the mat. If you would like to test your hip and knee mobility, and this is just for practice, see how low you can comfortably come down to the mat, and then we'll lie down on our backs, okay? If you just need to come down onto the mat, you're not quite warmed up yet, that is okay. So in this position now, I want you to bring your heels close enough to be able to tap them with your fingertips. Think about that parallel foot alignment again. So even in this setup, you might find that your feet want to turn out or they want to turn in. Really important here that you work in that parallel alignment and that the arches of your feet are active. we're going to start with a strengthener for the back of our hips. And the fun thing is that this is also a stretch for our quads and our hip flexors, which tend to be tight for those of us with knee pain. So arms down by our side, press the hands into the floor, and you're going to start to lift and lower your hips. Now go slow, okay? I want you guys to think here about what leg is doing more work. So oftentimes when we have hip or knee pain, we start to compensate a little bit. And it's not always our weaker side that's the painful one. Sometimes our weaker side kind of slows down. It doesn't do much work. And the other side starts to hurt because it's doing all of the work. So I want you guys to focus here as you lift and lower your hips by pushing down into your feet, using both of your legs together at the same pace. Now, I want you to also notice, are your legs kind of wiggle wobbling in and out? Are they wavering a little bit? Is your foot rolling in and out? See if you can think of your legs being nice and steady like railroad tracks. So another thing that we see happen is when we have some weakness on the inside and outside part of our hips, we get a lot of this side to side movement. That is something that over time can cause a lot of friction and stress, especially at the knee joint. So if you're someone who has pain on the inside or outside part of the knees, notice this here. See if you can keep your legs really straight forward and stiff as you lift and lower. Good. We'll do 3 more. Lower back down. That's it. Last 2. And 1 more time here. Drop the hips down to the mat. Excellent. So that was strengthening for the back side of our hips. Now we're going to work the front side of our hips and knee. So we'll start on the left leg, and you're going to straighten your left leg, laying it out on the mat. In this position, I want you to tighten up your leg. So imagine almost like you're pushing the back of your knee into the floor. From that position, keeping the leg totally straight, see if you can lift it just a few inches off the floor and back down. Now with this exercise, higher is not always better. So I want you to actually keep this a really small range of motion. This is what's called a straight leg raise, and this tests the strength of the muscles on the front side of our hip and our knee. Now also notice if your leg is rolling in or out. Again, let's think a little bit about the strength on the sides of our hips. Imagine like your knee cap is a headlight shining straight up to the ceiling. And I know this looks easy, but this one can get really tiring really fast. So just notice it. A lot of times we make this exercise easier by letting our knee unlock. I want you to keep your knees locked like it is a stiff board here. 2 more times. Good. Once more, lower it back down. Go ahead and bend the knee. Whew. And I promise you guys, we are getting into some stretching for these muscles too, but we want to get them nice and strong first. So we're going to press the right leg out now. Same thing, go ahead and tighten up that muscle on the front of the thigh, your quad muscle, by pressing your kneecap down towards the floor. Go ahead and start to slowly lift and lower back down. Now, first thing I want you to notice is which side feels easier. So again, we can start to pick up on those little imbalances from side to side in our own bodies. Make sure your kneecap is pointing up to the ceiling. Now, if you're getting pain in your kneecap with this exercise, chances are it means that your knee is not actually straight. That will actually put a lot of stress on the knee here. So I want you to tighten up the muscles on the front of the thigh, hold them really tight, and then lift, even just an inch or 2. See if you can slowly lower the leg to the floor instead of just letting it plop back down. 2 more here. Good. 1 more time like that. Good. And then go ahead and bend it back in. From here, we'll just do a very gentle hip stretch. Allow your arms to open out to the side and just gently rock your legs from side to side, keeping them hip distance apart. So nice and easy, just bringing a little rotation into our back, but our hips as well here. Now we're going to take this into a gentle hip stretch. So keeping your feet planted, take your left ankle on top of your right thigh. Now, this already might feel like a stretch for the outside of your left hip. And if it does, stay there. If not, reach for the back of your right thigh with your hands and start to pull your knees in towards your chest. From this position, it should still feel like a stretch. It shouldn't be painful. It shouldn't be sharp or pulling. If it is, back off a little bit. If you're feeling left knee pain here, take your hand onto the knee and gently push it away from your body. And that should help to take a little bit of stress off that structure and still keep the stretch in the outside of your left hip. So just notice that. Again, there's no right or wrong way to get a stretch here. It should just be gentle, and it may look quite different from person to person, and that's okay. Let your breath be comfortable and natural. Sometimes when we stretch, our body wants to hold our breath, but it's actually quite difficult for our muscles to relax when we're holding our breath. So make sure you're letting the big exhale breaths releasing out that air from the bottom of your lungs. We'll try one more breath just like this. Good. And then go ahead and place both feet down. We're going to go and switch to the other side. So go ahead now, crossing your right ankle on top of your left thigh. Walk your left foot in a little bit closer. Maybe this already feels like a stretch and you can stay just like that. If it does not, you can go ahead and hold the back of your thigh here. Now, if you're someone who has had a recent hip surgery where this is contraindicated, you can certainly keep your foot down onto the floor or just give it a little rest and join back in just a moment. Again, if you have right knee pain here, take your hand onto your knee. You're going to push it away from your body, just gently. These are all super, super gentle. It should feel like a stretch, not pain. Let yourself breathe. Feel your tailbone resting down onto the mat so your back is nice and flat here. Shoulders are relaxed back. Good. We'll hold for just another breath like this. And then go ahead and place it back down. Excellent. Okay, so we did a little strengthening for the back of the hip, for the front of the hip. Now we're going to look at the sides. And I know it feels like we're doing so much for the hip, but really our hip controls what happens at our knee. Our knee can only move in this front to back direction. So any change in that rotation comes from up higher at the hip. So let's go ahead and roll over onto our left side. So you can make a little pillow with your bicep. Now, if you're very sensitive to lying on your hip, go ahead and add in a pillow under your bottom hip or roll up your mat a couple of times. I also recommend that you keep your bottom knee bent here. That's going to help to unload the pressure on your hip. Now, from this position, you're just going to straighten and reach your right leg out long. Now, if you have pain in your right hip already, chances are it's because your foot is a little too low. So that actually starts to stretch and pull on the right hip. Try and bring your foot up to the height of your right hip and just hold it there. Draw your front ribs in, and I want you to think of reaching your right foot off the edge of the mat. Now, in this position, if you can look and see your kneecap, notice if it's pointing down towards the floor or maybe way up to the ceiling. I want your kneecap, like a headlight, to shine straight ahead, okay? So imagine almost like you're standing, your kneecap is pointing straight ahead, and just hold this. This can get a little bit tiring just holding this here. And if that's the case, you're gonna stay just as you are. Otherwise, we're gonna start to lift and lower, teeny tiny, okay? Bigger is not better for this one. I want you to keep it really small. And when you lower down, lowering only to the height of the hip, so not below the hip. Staying up in that higher range of motion. The reason being is that creates less impingement inside the hip joint. So this should be a little bit easier to move. Now, if you feel cramping in the top of the hip, bring your foot backwards a little bit and then keep going. This should work the outside glutes, your butt muscles. So kind of back on the side of your hip. If it's all cramping in the front, just bring your foot back a little bit farther. Good. 5 more. That's it, guys. 4, last 3, last 2, Last time there, good, and bend it back in. Excellent. Okay, so we're gonna switch to the other side. You guys can roll over. I'm just gonna sit on up so you can continue to see me here. And same thing, if you need a pillow underneath your hips for comfort, you can do that. Go ahead and bend your bottom leg and then press your top leg out straight. If you feel really wobbly and unbalanced, you can hold your hand to the floor, but I think it's really helpful to hold your hand to your top hip. It's gonna give you some more information about what's happening here. So first, stretch the leg out long. Reach your toes past the end of the mat. See if you can hold that length in your side and make sure your foot is at least at the height of your hip. From there, we start to lift and lower. You can gaze down at your kneecap. Your kneecap should be pointing straight ahead. Okay, if it's way down to the floor or way up to the ceiling, see if you can point it ahead like a flashlight and continue with that lift and lower. Now notice how this feels. Notice if there's weakness on one side than the other. If you're someone who tends to have knee pain on the inside part of your knee, this exercise is really important because this muscle is what controls the stress on the inside part of your knee. So these are also muscles that tend to be pretty weak on most people. And that's because we don't do a lot of sideways movement naturally in our life. These muscles also play a really important role in balance. So if you feel off balance on one side compared to the other, and we're going to look at that in a moment, that's another thing you may want to think about here. Good. We'll try 3 more. And 2. One more time, lower it down. Whew. And then you guys can press yourself on up to a seated position. So we're going to do the rest of our class up in standing. And so if you need to make any camera adjustments or move things around in your space, go ahead and come on up to a standing position. I want to make sure that you guys can see as much of me as possible. I know my head is not in the picture, but I want you to be able to see both my feet and hips. So we just did a lot of work for the thigh muscles. We're going to take a little stretch for the quads here. A couple of options. If you're someone who feels off balance, make sure you have a piece of furniture or a wall nearby to hold on. You're going to go ahead and grab the back of your ankle to bend your knee for a stretch. Now, I know this is not possible for everyone. So if you do not have that flexibility to grab your foot, you can rest your foot on a chair behind you, or practice just reaching the leg backwards like so to stretch the front of the thigh. So for those of you who are able to grab the back of the ankle or shin, I want you to stand tall. Try and line up your knees with one another. So if the leg is really far forward, see if you can bring it back so your 2 knees are aligned. From the front, if your leg is way out to the side, see if you can bring your knees closer together. Tighten up your core, tighten up your butt muscle, and stand tall. And that should give you a pretty deep stretch across the front of your quad. If you're still not feeling that stretch, you can pull the leg behind you just slightly more. But you shouldn't have to go super far to find that stretch here. Again, don't be afraid to hold on to something if you feel like you need that support for balance. I want you to be able to relax into this stretch a little bit. We'll hold for just another moment there. And then release. You can shake it out a little bit, and we're going to try the same thing on the other side. Now, if you find when you're doing this stretch that it feels really compressive and kind of painful on your knee, I want you to scale it back to maybe the one where you're just resting your foot on the chair, or perhaps even just reaching the leg behind you to open up the front of the leg. That may mean that you have a little bit of tension or perhaps even a little bit of swelling in the knee that makes this compressed position uncomfortable, and that's okay. So we don't want to push into that. We want to just find a gentle stretch. Try one of those alternatives, but same thing, pick your chest up tall. Draw your knee backwards so it's in line with your other knee, and from the front, draw your 2 knees towards one another. Roll the shoulders down and back. Pick the top of your head up tall. We'll hold for just another moment here, and then release it back down and shake it out. Now, this is our hip and knee class, right? But our knee joint, the back of the knee joint, is actually controlled by our ankle. So our calf muscle comes all the way up the back of the leg, right behind the back of your knee. So a lot of times weakness and instability in the knee can be related to weakness in the calf muscle. So next up, we're going to look at some calf strength, but I want you guys to think about your form here. So come back to that parallel standing foot alignment. Look down, see all 5 toes into the floor, press your heels into the floor, and I want you to tighten up your quad muscles, the knees, so that your knees are straight. Think like that straight leg raise lifting exercise we did laying on the floor. Once you have that position, start to lower and lift. Now, sometimes when these muscles are weak, what happens is our knees will buckle a little bit. I'm exaggerating, but you lift up and the knees bend a little bit. Go really slow because I want you to notice if that's happening to you. And if it is, that's something that tends to put a little bit more stress on the knees as well. When you're lifting and lowering, see if you can go really, really slow. Imagine like you're landing on a sheet of glass. Be delicate and allow your heels to gently drop down. At the same time, from the front, if you notice that your ankles are kind of rolling out or all the weight is on your pinky toe, try and spread out the weight a little bit more evenly here. The same kind of thing, that if your weight is always rolling to the outside of your foot, that can be quite stressful for the sides of the knees and even all the way up to the hip joint. So the strength down at our ankles really does influence how the other joints are moving. So use this as an opportunity to build strength and that nice neutral alignment. And I know those muscles are getting tired. They fatigue out quickly here, but I want you guys to push through it a little bit, get taller through your spine. We've got 5 more. Lower back down, lift up for 4, gently lower back down, lift up for 3. Good, guys, that's it. 2, lower back down, 1 more time, and lower back down and shake it out. Whew, good. So we're going to give the ankles a little stretch here as well. One of the most common reasons I see some pain in the knee with going up and down stairs is actually ankle tightness. So if you're tight in the front of your ankles, it puts more stress on your knee on the stairs. So what we'll do here is step our right foot forward, our left foot backwards, taking a wide stance. You're going to bend your right knee and push your left heel into the mat, down onto the floor behind you. So you should feel a nice stretch through the back of your left ankle here. I'm actually pushing my right foot forward at the same time as pushing my left foot backwards. So it's almost like I'm trying to stretch my mat out or rip it in half. In this position, again, if you feel wobbly and unbalanced, you can certainly hold on to something. I want you to be able to relax a little bit into this posture. Good. Hold and breathe here. We'll try one more big breath in and a big breath out, and then we'll go ahead and switch to the other side. So now left foot stays forward. You're going to step your right foot behind you, bend your left knee and push your heel down to the floor on your right foot. And you should feel a nice stretch through the calf muscle, maybe even into the ankle on your right foot. Look at your feet here, make sure they're still parallel to one another. So it's amazing how our body really wants to find that turned out or turned in position. See if you can maximize your stretch, staying in that parallel alignment. Almost allow your nose to tip forward over your toes and just hold and breathe. If you need to hold on to something here, you can go ahead and do so as well. And take one more breath in and then gently release. Good. Okay, so the last thing we're going to test out in this standing posture here is simply some balance. And balance is really critical to how our hips feel and how our knees feel. We are weight-bearing people and humans, and so we experience little bits of balance with every single step we take. So it can tell us a lot about how our hips are doing and knees. So last time, look down at your feet. They should be parallel to one another. If you know that your balance is not great, I want you to have a wall handy to hold on to. Go ahead and pick up your left foot. Now, if when you did so, all of a sudden things are wobbling, notice that and see if you can find your center a little bit. Push down into your left foot, into your right foot rather. You should feel your right glute, your butt muscle doing a little bit of work here. So check in, make sure that it is active. That's a big component of balance. Your quad muscle here should also be active, as well as the little muscles down at our feet. Notice, where do you feel the most tired? What is working the hardest here? Maybe that's telling you a little bit about where you need to focus some of your strengthening work. And just hold and breathe. This also looks easy, can be quite tiring here. Get taller through the top of the spine. Notice if your body is leaning backwards to compensate. Try and stack your shoulders right on top of your hips and ankles. Hold for one more breath here. And then go ahead and bring it back down. We're going to check and test the other side. So now shift your body weight to the left, push down into your left foot, and pick your right leg up and just hold. Lift your spine tall, push your foot down into the floor, grip the ground with your toes. Check and make sure you feel your left glute muscle working here. Keep a soft bend into your knees. Continue to lengthen the spine up. Again, this is just data for us. Notice, is this side much harder? Is it much easier? Do I feel more balanced? Sometimes, like I said, it's our more balanced side that tends to take the work of our day-to-day life. So sometimes that's the one that's painful, and that's something just to notice. Good, hold and breathe. We'll try one more breath here. Good, and then drop it down and go ahead and shake it out. You can kick your feet out a little bit. You can draw a couple of hip circles here, just rinsing out all that work that we just did. We are gonna finish with a little bit of breath work. So let me go ahead. I know we will have some questions that come up, but I'd like to just complete all of that work we did with a community breath here together. So we'll take an inhale, reach, and an exhale, release, and let it go. So let me come a little bit closer here. That concludes the movement-based part of our